books open. Delano
Okay.
would know about all that.
I thought I was in the middle of my presentation. Okay.
Oh boy. Salam once again. Good morning, Delano. Grand Rising, peace to all. What's happening?
Good. Well, nothing much is happening. I'm sitting at my kitchen table. And just telling our friend there that I was at a Rotary meeting just a minute ago on Zoom, and that ended at 8:30. So I've come here now to be a part of this.
Well, give thanks. And of course, let me just give a snapshot of Delano really quick, Iman. Delano is our longest standing engineer in the community for tele broadcast communications. He has spanned the time of the first antennas going up to broadcast across Bermuda. Yes, he has been the longest probably running qualified local engineer of such, and still assists with many different things just today out of the love of his heart. He teaches with us here and gives his time to the young people at Fresh Start. So we have a wealth of amazing years of experience. He is one of the founding members down with Montague Shepard down at ZFB. He actually helped them put that all together as the engineer and ran it for Montague for many years down at ZFB. He also saw this is a piece I'm gonna do this because I have to do this because I don't get the opportunity to do this much. So we're blessed to actually have this elder with us, and he is also one of the founding trade union members. Okay, he was in the room. Okay, when Artiwell Simmons was put to power. And that's a story in itself. But he has been a part of the union for many, many years. And a lot of people don't know he was right there. What was the other gentleman name, Delano?
That was when the action tech event such were there was a special meeting being held when they were having the first full-time paid president. It's going to be a full-time job for the head or the leader or the president of the union. And those of us who are of age will remember Robert Johnson.
Robert Johnson
was the then president, and then when the job was going to become a full-time job, we had an election out to the gas station is now in the old Union building, and Adi Simmons was elected president of the union at that time, much to the dismay of all those who thought that Robert Johnson would come out victorious.
So listen, like I said, that's another story.
Another story, yes,
right?
Yes.
But Delano, if we had to really list off, he's a musician. Salvation Army. He has given so much time to this community, and I'm honored to be able to even celebrate him at this point. But he has been in my life. He is a huge part of where I am today. In terms of giving me my start at ZBM. And when a lot of people thought this was probably one of the meanest guys in the world to help you, and I can say that, I found it like almost amazing. I said I wanted to do something. He pulled out a camera, got it working for me, and I started shooting. It was a old 19 whatever Ikigami, and I took that thing out with the old recorder. And so I have found him that way ever since. And so this
too many flowers. I'm starting to get goosebumps.
Well, and you know what? That's what you're supposed to have. And like I said, I'm look for this day that I'm able to celebrate you, Delano, because I think you deserve it, and too many times we don't get a chance to hear this. So I'm making sure I have my opportunity to give you those flowers now, and you can't do nothing about it. About the mic.
Yeah. Okay.
And so Delano comes with a wealth of knowledge over the last 50 plus years, okay, of where telecommunications broadcasting has been. He's worked these towers. He's climbed these towers. So that's why it's important, I thought, as Delano to come in as the base of introducing and sharing with us. Now, I'm going to ask Delano because, like I said, he's got a whole lot in that head. So what I'm going to ask him to do is to try to keep it as tight as possible and try to condense it for us, right? So we could truly also get into the discussion with people with a good base. So I know it's only a certain amount of time we can do it, but I'm just going to ask if you can to, try and be as tight as possible. It's a lot of years and there's a lot of things I know that we have to share. I don't want to rush you, but that's what I just want us to just keep in mind. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over now to let the platform open up, right? So that we start the discussion. This is the 5G platform that we're having today. It's really Iman's driving this, so Iman can take it from her.
Okay, thank you. Salam te again, Elmore, and grand rise to all FreshTV faithful. Morning, Delano. Long time.
Morning, yes.
It's been a few weeks since we've been working together.
We work together, yeah. I've been knocked down.
Yeah.
So I don't know what's going on outside of my room.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The energy levels of them students is you miss it after a while. They can get on your nerves, but you miss it.
Yeah. Well,
So
I've been actively involved with them, helping the government do its press conferences. So that's the only exit I've been doing to get from my home to Berkeley to help with some of the work involved with the government's press conferences.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, I know you're highly integrated in anything telecommunications on the island. And we come from the same neighborhood. There's a connection there. You knew my family well, my mother and father. And we were able to make that connection again. And we also have another part of the panel who'll be joining in a few minutes, Dr. Chapman. So we'd like to see if we can get restore a bit of history to the framework in terms of how telecommunications got its roots or started to take root here in Bermuda. You was integral in that whole process. So if you could pave that picture for us in as simple terms as you can so people can get a grasp of these topics. In between there, I will, when on occasion, or if need be, I will introduce some terminology that's used throughout this to help make it a little more clear. And then we'll gradually shift the emphasis to Dr. David Chapman, and the potential biological effects. So if you could start off where you see fit in painting this picture of how the telecommunications and its ability to transmit a signal over distance or wireless technologies, how did it take shape in Bermuda, and what were some of the first technologies and the dates and whatnot?
Well, I was very proud to say that even before my time, right, in the first radio transmissions that happened in the 40s in Bermuda. Was one radio station came on and was on the air for like an hour a day, right? And as time has gone past, it's evolved to what we have today. And I can say to you that the technology has moved in such a way where all those people who were doing things that I was doing, right, way back, don't have those types of concerns anymore. And as much as to say that the way that we're doing this right now wouldn't have been a figment of anybody's imagination. If my grandfather were alive and saw a television set, he would not understand that, right? So, but I'm just here being a part of some of this change in technology. And as I started to say to you earlier, when ZFB came along is when I started. I started with ZFB in 1965 when they were building ZFB television station. 1962 when ZFB radio started up and the transmitter, the dockyard and the station was up before then, ZBM had its facility, and they were operating from Indiana Road, and their transmitters were out there in the swamp area, where we know that I think who's out there now? It's right there next door to Velcro's main plant, right? Because the way radio transmitters worked in those days, they were what we call long wave radio, which means that the radiation was like ground waving. So the transmitters had to be, or the towers had to be set up as close to the ocean or close to the water or the sea or the land surface or the water surface as possible. Because
let me hold you for a second. Is the audio good? I'm getting a message that the audio is real low.
For online.
Yeah,
I don't know what we changed from whatever we changed from last night, but that doesn't sound as robust. I don't know if it's the mic you're on, Delano, or what. I know last night you didn't have the headphones.
No, headphones. I'm only listening with the headphone because I don't have my microphone is built right into my computer.
Okay,
you know,
I'll turn it up on this side. Let me see if I'll just turn it up. I could hear him, but maybe out on the online. I'll boost it up online. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, because I tested it earlier, right, on the Zoom that I was just doing, and it was fine because it allows me to do microphone checks.
Okay.
But anyway, yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I can hear you. So you were going into about low wave, ground waves.
Ground waves. So what I'm saying is that which was AM radio, right? The distance it traveled, depending on what type of surface, right, along the surface of the earth, right? And then you would know that as time went on, as the days got longer and the distance was on the ground longer, then the radio signal had longer distances. Right, and then as a part of it was when the ionosphere, which is where transmissions are, as the space between the atmosphere and Earth. As darkness came, you were able to send the signal. As nighttime came, you were able to send the signal almost around the world. Right, so but we were limited to the amount of power that we could put out of a transmitter. Right, the radio transmitters had to be couldn't be more than 1,000 watts.
Okay, that's significant. The power. I want to keep that those concepts as clear as possible, because power is significant when you go between different devices. So if you can emphasize that as you go through the discussion, the different transmitters and the different power ratings that they have.
I don't know.
Looks like it's frozen. And it's okay.
Looks like he froze.
Okay, so we'll wait. And in the meantime, while we wait for him to come clear, I can go into a quick presentation on some of these concepts here, while his and maybe if you can talk with him on another platform.
Yeah, I'm gonna call him.
And then I'm gonna kick him out automatically now, just so he can come back in.
Yeah.
And then I'll share my screen and go into this presentation. Slide presentation. All right. So this is just to describe some of the terms and terminology that people may not be familiar with, or we may use so often that it loses some of its meaning. Some of these terminology. Radiation in general is a term that's overused, and scientifically or in the term itself has lost its significance or its accuracy. We're not using it precisely as we should. So let's to really understand this field. You see, still over there. You see, okay. So what is radiation? Going the wrong direction. let's see right there. So let's give a definition. So electromagnetic radiation is, it is the emission or transmission of energy. This is one of the key pieces I want us to keep track of as we're conducting this conversation, to not lose that concept. Electromagnetic radiation. We got him back?
No, that's Brother David.
All right.
That's Dr. David.
So as we go on, and we'll come to morning, but we'll come back to Delenor's presentation and then move to Dr. Chapman's part of the conversation. And it looks like it's coming up now. So I'll just continue on with this slide and then we'll bounce back, and I'll kind of intercede with this as I see fit to explain some terminologies. But for right now, what I want to key in on is that this radiation that we talk about is simply the emission or transmission, which means two-way. There's a signal being sent out and there's a signal being received, right? Transmission of energy in the form of waves or particles, or both. There's theory for both of them, or it can be explained depending on how you're measuring it. It can either come in the form of a wave, or you can measure it in the form of a particle, and we'll look at that. And it travels through space, which means that through a vacuum or through a material medium, or through a metal, something that has free electrons in it, will permit the movement of energy through it. But all material has the potential to radiate energy depending on the energy state of that material. These are critical pieces. So radiation, just to give that term clarity, we're not talking of some hocus pocus, something that is from out of, well, literally it can come from outer space, and we will see, but it's not some magical substance. It is energy, right? And the word radiation arises from this phenomenon of waves radiating outward from a source. So that connotation of radiation just means it's moving outward, that emission component of it. So looks like we got everybody online now. So I'll come back.
Yeah, I just somebody phoned my house and my service went down. But you're absolutely right. I pulled the phone plug out. So you're right with respect to radiation. But anything that produces heat, right, is radiating something, right? And that could be anything from the sun down to the human body, right? So radiation is the energy that's put out, or the heat energy that's put out from these devices, right? So it's very important that we take note of that, because at the end of the day, the impact that radiation has is the environment that it's in, and for how long you're able to stand being in that environment without it impact on your health.
No, that was it. How long and so you're saying here is that the amount of time that we're spending in the area where things are being radiated.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's where the concern is.
Yeah, the concern is there, right? Because I'm saying way back when, no one would consider that being out in the sun, right, which is the highest energy producing device there is around us, that you would then, the consequences of being out in the sun causes cancer. And then people talk about they got skin cancer as a result of being out in the sun. And that all depends on how much time you spend in the environment where the radiation is. And the closer you are to where the radiation is emanating, then the worse or the more of effect it's going to have on you yourself and your condition. Yes?
Okay. Right. So if you could continue setting the groundwork on telecommunications industry and how it came to be in the Bermuda and the various stages as they exist in Bermuda.
Well, yes, just going back to that subject. The pertinent part of it is that as we were developing technology here, a lot of the concerns that were about the radiation impact, right, was that since Bermuda's transmission facilities were so low power, right? For instance, like I said before we went off, before I went off, 1,000 watts is the maximum amount of power we can radiate in Bermuda for a radio station, right? So, but the environment for those stations were, for instance, ZFB's towers about the dark zone, right? So these towers are only put in spaces, whereas the residential part of it wasn't so significant. In the U.S. now, when they have megawatt stations, right, you usually find these transmitters and towers way out in these rooms somewhere, right, where there's not in an environmental space, right? So I do remember that the impact that radiation has on people, right, was based primarily on, like I said, the environment and how much time we spend in that environment. In the U.S., you could not be, or in fact, but I trained in Canada, you could not be in an environment where the radiation was. And this is going back in the early days now, where the radiation level was high, and you could be in an environment for more than 15 minutes, right? If you're in that environment, you want to be able to be moving out of that, right, environment. I do remember that when I went to WM tour, the radiation in that area, because the station was right underneath the tower, be able to try to eliminate the radiation in the room, they built wire cages inside the building and grounded the wire cages to shield the people who were inside the building away from the radiation. Right? Because I know people got upset with me when I first went over to work. I said the first thing I want to do is move those transmitters, right, from out of Prospect out to Dockyard. And I did that, right? And then without anybody saying anything, it was a significant noticing of the impact or how the environment felt once I did that. You know, so but these are the types of things that were of concern, and have always been of concern to me. All right, like I said, the closer you are to where the radiation or the energy is emanating from, then the more harmful effect it will have on you.
Okay. So you said that those transmitters were at 1,000 watts still. 1,000
watts still. Right, so even as we came forward, when television came about, then we were able to increase the power from 1,000 watts up to a maximum of 2,000 watts. Right, but what the difference between television stations, they were slightly higher. When we moved from a very high frequency and to ultra high frequency, then the network transmission became different from that of AM transmission. Like I said, AM transmission was ground waves.
Ground waves.
Television transmission, FM transmission, those are what we call skywave transmissions. Right? So what happened is that the signal went from the transmitting site to the ionosphere. When that hit the ionosphere barrier, those signals then bounce back down to Earth. Right? And then the signal would be again highest at the first point of the bouncing back down to Earth. And as the distance went out, the further you went out there, it was more difficult it was to have an impact on the immediate surroundings. That's why the further away you are, the more of a receptive device you would need for picking up these signals, right? So that's because the environment that the radiation is in is not as strong as the environment that is closest to the device that's the source. Yeah.
Okay. So television, the shift to television required an upgrade of the system. It was still located in Dockyard?
No. There became the television transmitters were always in Prospect, and they are enforced back to this day. But the difficulty that I had with all this stuff is that you can put, while you may put 2,000 watts of power into the antenna system, that was not the issue. The government limited the broadcast is limited to only have 2,000 watts of input power to the antenna. But the main part of it was what we call the effective radiated power. The effective radiated power, the ERF, right? The ERP is if you take 2,000 watts and you feed it into an antenna that's 4 or 5 beds, and let's say, for instance, that antenna has a gain of 0.9. You multiply the input power by 0.9 to get the effective radiated power, right? So now, what was 2,000 watts is now 20,000 watts coming out of that location. Okay, when I sent a letter to the then inspector of communications way back then, I said, that they were trying to move the BM transmitter up to Prospect, and the inspector I told the inspector that you can't put people in an environment where that type of radiation exists. And I said, you're going to harm the people. And his words prove it, right? And I do know that in my knowledge of radiation, how it works, it radiates to the point of where it touches down, and then the radiation, once it meets those radio waves, when they meet, they then they heat the area where they come together, and then they go out from that spot, right, toward the outer part of whatever the material is. So all the heating that happens from the center to the outside or to the exterior. Wow. That's how a microwave works.
Wow.
Right? When the microwave is cooking, it cooks from the center to the outside.
Wow. And so does that mean that in the same framework, Delano, that so the amount of heat that your body is taking on, it will then show up on your outside of the surface of your body?
Absolutely. And then you're radiating.
Okay.
You're radiating out. Heat comes out. All right. And I'm saying the radiation that's coming from a person's body isn't as significant as the radiation that's coming from these man-made sources that do the television broadcasting and all those types of things.
Can we? You know what? I'm gonna ask you to do something for me. Can you turn off you might have to turn off your camera so we could have a better shot at the audio, Delano. Yeah, because you just keep stepping in and stepping. So we might, let's see if we could, unfortunately, you could turn it on from time to time. Maybe when you're talking, you could turn it off. And then when you're talking.
Right now.
Yes. Yeah.
My camera is off.
Yeah, better. Yeah. So because it's more important we hear you than see you. I mean, you're beautiful.
Unless I drop down the bandwidth. Right now I'm transmitting in high definition. So if I drop down maybe to something lower.
Okay, drop down lower then.
Let's see what I can do with that.
So Iman, that whole piece about radiation and you becoming radioactive, that's pretty serious. In that how this whole thing about skin cancer is the result of you becoming radiant, right? With this taking in all this energy, and that is the symptom coming out the other side. Is that what's been absorbed inside your body.
Okay, you're reflecting on what is.
I was just reflecting on what he was saying. Yeah, I was just reflecting on what he was saying. In terms of how this all works. So, it makes sense for me to now understand. Okay, it's not because it's just hitting your skin. It's because this stuff goes inside and comes out.
Well, that with one piece of definitely. When you say this stuff, it's real critical.
Radiation.
Well, energy.
Energy.
It's transmission of energy. It's not
energy.
It's energy. So microwaves. You were referring to the fact how microwaves warm things up, which microwaves are in the thermal side of the spectrum. They excite the atoms inside your body, particularly the water molecules, are excited by the frequency of the microwaves. It's the bandwidth of the length of the waves causes it to be absorbed by these atoms within your body or within whatever material you're heating up in your microwave oven, and that energy is transferred as heat, and it's an increase in temperature that we would measure. So I just want to be accurate on the terminology that we're using, and not to stray into, you know what I mean? So radiation, we're talking about energy transfer, right? But what looks like we lost Delano again.
But
So
let's introduce our beloved doctor who's been on the screen, and make sure he opens up his mic. So let's introduce him as well. Kick Delano out so he comes back in, Iman. And let's introduce.
Let's do that.
Dr. David Roots Chapman.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Salamte. Welcome.
Greetings, Tanastilin. Thank you for having me.
Xavier Muscat.
Yeah, I was chomping at the bit listening to the conversation. You know, when you're talking about science, I'm like, whoa, I need to get involved in this.
Yes.
To let me know when I can, get on board.
Well, go ahead. Let him.
Well, hold on. Let me introduce him. It's a man who requires is we need to keep up to date with what he's been working on.
True.
Where he's at, because if you just knew him from the hood or from Berkeley or teaching at Berkeley or whatnot, a lot's going on since then. So just give a quick bio as we let Delano log back in. So Dr. David Chapman, I know him as Tasfa, but known colloquially as Dr. David Roots or Living Roots, now on YouTube, is a PhD trained researcher whose academic field is in environmental sciences and sustainable development. And that's for the last 20 plus years in environmental sciences. More recently in sustainable development, his PhD on alternative energy. Dr. Roots currently works as a teacher of chemistry based in London, UK, with his wife and family, but involves himself on a personal level across the international community with topics related to natural health, metaphysics, and spirituality, as well as, and I'm sure always will be, the environment. That's a fundamental piece. Recently, Dr. Roots has been on a campaign to educate the public in regards to bringing awareness to the international rollout of 5G technology, as well as other matters with the potential to affect our health and welfare. And when he says us, he means the worldwide community, humanity. He can specify who that our health is referring to. Dr. Roots is also the author of several books, including The Wealth Building Cycle, as well as locally acclaimed Daddy and I Explore Big Book Series, which you can find in your local bookstores. So welcome, Dr. Chapman. And please engage yourself where you see fit. We'll be definitely referring some questions, but if you want to give a bit an introduction to yourself at something you were jumping a bit on, you can jump right in.
I just wanted to say thank you to Mr. Ingham, as I know him as, an elder in our community. The reality is, as we spoke before, Brother Iman, is we need more people like him, male and female, within that field. He is obviously an elder in the field. So is my father, Earlston Chapman, who worked underneath him at ZFB and then ZBM. And at BBC, Bermuda Broadcasting Company. Those elders will know more than I do in terms of, the legacy and how ZFB and ZBM transitioned into BBC and who was there and who wasn't. But the knowledge that they have, and I talked to my father off, obviously off camera lots about, we get into some heavy discussions about technology, about engineering, and so on and so on. And when it comes to engineering, a lot of these principles that he was speaking about, they don't change. The fundamental aspects of engineering or broadcasting, that it didn't matter if you were educated in the 70s or if you're educated now in 2020, the information and the principles are the same. What things have changed is obviously the move towards digital technology, but the signals used or the frequencies and the type of medium used to transfer that information is still the same. The signal has gone digital, meaning it's now 1 and 0s. The information is coming as 1s and 0s, but the medium, the electromagnetic waves, is still being, it's the same that's still being used, radio waves and microwaves. I wanted to jump in because I saw Almore, Brother Almore was giving some information, and it's important that we understand that there's a difference between, and tell me if I'm talking too quickly because obviously okay, good. There's a difference between radioactivity and electromagnetic radiation, and we want people to be clear on that. Radioactivity involves, as you would know, energy emitting out of the nucleus of an atom. And there's 3 main types of radioactivity: alpha and beta and gamma. Whereas electromagnetic radiation is non-nuclear. Although nuclear radiation can emit gamma waves, which is also part of the electromagnetic spectrum. So the effects are different because the medium is different. So that's a clear thing that we need to make sure that when people are using their mobile phones, their microwaves, the cell phone towers, we're not talking about radioactivity as in nuclear radioactivity. We're talking about electromagnetic radiation. So that was an important part. And there are safety concerns, and there are, with both. But the safety concerns are a bit different for both because of the nature of the physical properties.
Yes, excellent. Actually,
Thank you.
while we're still waiting for Dylan to come in, that definitely thanks for that clarification.
Thank you very much indeed, because I dial in as the dummy. See, that's how you get to go, that's how you get to put out good information, because I dial in as the dummy.
But it's an important point because you were getting into conversations about power and intensity, and Elder Ingham was mentioning, I can't remember the figures, but hopefully he jumps back in. He was talking about the thousands of watts for the radio towers.
Right, 20,000. He said it went from 1,000.
Yeah,
so
and he talked about the gain. Once you had the gain, and then it would multiply that. Right. But when we're talking about mobile phones and Wi-Fi and cellular towers, we're talking about in the milliwatt range. So the power is very, very, very much lower in regards to what is being emanated from these devices. But there are still issues with that we can get into. So I'll let you, kind of guide the discussion, Brother Iman. But when we're talking about the power from a broadcasting tower, which obviously has to carry the information very, very far distance compared to the power emanating from a mobile phone or a Wi-Fi router. Obviously, a microwave now, inside the oven, the wattage, the power emitted inside the oven is going to be much higher because you're trying to heat up the food. And but compared to a mobile phone, the power is much lower. So we're talking about the milliwatt range, and we can talk about some of the effects that happen because the same heating effects can happen even though you're in that milliwatt range.
Exactly. So we were just reiterating, Delano, the different power ratings of the different antennas. Your mic is still. I can't hear you yet. Look like you moved your mouth.
Hello.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, we're getting
Can you hear
you.
me?
So, right. So
I don't know why I keep dropping out here, but I'm saying, and you're absolutely right, what David is talking about with respect to the waves and the energy, the radiation. What happens every time there's something radiating is radiating at a specific frequency, and the frequency that is the radiation frequency are those things that are the real concern. The lower the frequency, the less impact it has, and the higher the frequency, the more impact it has. So with respect to radiation, the world has determined radiation in the categories of ionizing and non-ionizing frequencies, right? So when you get to the low frequency, very high frequency, ultra high frequency, then you get to ultraviolet frequency. Everything above that there is really impactful. So in terms of the actual radiation, the lower frequency or the ionization and non-ionization is determined, and that's what the argument is right now, is that how impactful is that going to be with respect to its effect on our health. So we do know that ionizing radiation, it has more of an impact on how it impacts on its environment with respect to cell adjustment.
Wow.
I'll jump. Is he coming back in?
Yeah, I'm not sure why we're losing him so much.
He's got problems with bandwidth down there.
Yes. Okay, so using the diagram that you have on my screen, I'm not sure if everyone else can see it.
Yeah,
everyone sees it.
Yeah. So as he said, these different forms of electromagnetic radiation are on the screen. There are several different categories. However, when you're really dealing with the science, the categories are just really given by man-made labels. There's no distinct boundaries between each category. So we'll say gamma rays, X-rays, UV rays, visible light, so on and so on. The boundaries between them are not discrete. They're just sort of things that man, humans have put in and said, we're going to call these gamma rays, we're going to call these X-rays, we're going to call UV rays. What Elder Ingham was talking about was the ionizing categories or ionizing part of the spectrum, which would be gamma rays, X-rays, and UV rays. These are the high energy electromagnetic waves that can cause direct impacts due to the ionizing effect. Ionizing meaning that they can knock off electrons from atoms. And so if you can knock off an electron, then obviously you can interact with things like DNA. And if you interact with things like DNA, you can cause the programming of cells to be impacted, and then you can get cancer and things like that. So UV rays can cause skin cancer. X-rays we know can cause cancer. And obviously gamma rays can cause cancer. Hence why when you go to the dentist or the doctor and you need an X-ray, they need to limit their exposure. So they put an apron on you and they also go out of the room. Okay. It's interesting to note that with the X-rays, that even though they can cause cancer, that little bit of X-ray that you get when you go to the dentist will not have an impact on you or on the dentist. So why does the dentist leave the room? Why does the X-ray technician leave the room? It's because scientists are also concerned about the cumulative effects. So over time, even though that dentist on that one day, that 1 hour, or that one instance might get some exposure to X-rays, that's really not going to have an effect. But what about the use over time? That if they're doing that every week for 10 years, they know that might lead to having some issues. So what I'm trying to speak on is that a lot of times with the radiation, electromagnetic radiation, it's important to not just look at the instantaneous effect, but the cumulative effects. Okay, the cumulative effects. On the other side of the spectrum, past visible light. I like the other diagram you had, because it was a bit simpler for people.
Right.
But on the other side of the electromagnetic spectrum, on the right-hand side of the way I'm seeing it on the screen, from visible light, there we go. You have the radio waves and the microwaves. Now, mobile phones use microwaves. Microwaves are really just a form of radio waves, basically, okay? Microwaves are just a form of radio waves in a sense, and but they have a higher frequency than radio waves. So the devices that we use are mobile phones, Wi-Fi, as well as your microwave oven, as well as the mobile phone transmitters. They operate in the microwave spectrum. They are non-ionizing, meaning they do not cause the electrons on atoms to be removed. So in that regard, they are much safer than the gamma rays, X-rays, and UV rays, but they do have some effects. The chief effect is, with the use of microwaves and radio waves, is that they can cause heating, okay? And that heating is called the dielectric effect. So, you still with me, brothers?
Yes.
Okay. Right. So the dielectric effect is, as you were saying earlier, when a microwave passes through the thing about it, the things on the right, the radio waves, the microwaves, they have a much higher penetrating power than the things on the left. So the things on the left are more dangerous, gamma rays, X-rays, UV rays, because of their ionizing effect, but they don't penetrate as much. Gamma rays can penetrate, but X-rays and UV rays don't penetrate as much. Whereas radio waves and long radio waves and microwaves, they can penetrate things a lot more. Okay, I see Brother Ingram is back. But I was just going to say that with the microwaves, the effect is called dielectric heating. So when they interact, as all electromagnetic waves do, when they hit a surface, the electrons in that surface start to pulse, okay? Because microwaves don't carry as much.
Everybody's gonna start acting up now, waking up, see? Everybody's waking up. Iman, you still there?
They're non-ionizing, but You
repeat that, see?
Say that again?
You're gonna have to repeat that. You just blocked up for a minute. Everybody must be waking up or something. And
okay.
So repeat that piece that you just, I think we just missed the sentence leading into that.
Okay. That microwaves heat up things by what's called the dielectric effect.
Right.
Okay. So when they interact with substances, the electrons that make up all of, electrons are part of all matter, because all matter contains atoms and all atoms contain electrons. The electrons will pulse and they will move. And that movement of the electrons can cause heating, okay? So microwaves and radio waves are non-ionizing.
Non-ionizing waves.
So that heating is why mobile phones, companies, and your microwave oven works. So your microwave oven heats up food because of that impact of the microwave radiation on the foods. Okay, now, this is why with mobile phones, you have a specific absorption rate, an SAR. If you read the instructions for our mobile phones generally are rated to be 2 centimeters away when you use them. Okay? But as you know, most people, well, maybe not so much now because people are becoming educated, but back in the day, people would put the mobile phone up to their head. And the companies know that that is not safe because they can cause heating in the tissue directly underneath the mobile phone. So in that case, that will be the skull. And in the skull, you have lots of water in the brain tissue. And so the brain tissue could heat up in those areas. The other concern is that same heating effect. Remember that a mobile phone, obviously the mobile phones are getting better now. So they're not always emitting and transmitting in that regard, like at that same level. But they're always active. So my point in saying that is that even if you put your mobile phone into your pocket, which a lot of people do, especially for men who have their genitalia externally, that heating effect then can be transferred to their genitalia, including their testicles. That's a lot of concern that people have when it comes to directly the impact of the emission of the microwaves from mobile phone, that it can be dangerous for the tissue. There is lots of studies that have been done to look at the effects of mobile phones being used against your head, or women were carrying them in their bras. So the effects were being seen in their breast tissue, as well as the effect on sperm count in men that were using the mobile phones and holding them in their.
Just lost him for a second.
Yeah, he's frozen
He
too.
froze up. Yeah, see, it's as people are waking up.
He's gone.
He's going.
He's gone.
Okay.
I've lost his connection. Let me.
Drop in. So Delano is
Drop him
struggling with his.
Well, yeah.
Boy.
Let him come back.
Yeah, I don't know. That's what we were experiencing with the dropout, right? As people come online,
Yeah.
everybody's trying to use the internet, so the services ain't up to speed.
So
Yesterday, my service went down to 8 megabits per second. So
this is a big conversation.
But,
Yeah,
big conversation. I'm saying.
Conversation.
Yes, Delano. Let me pull this page down.
Yeah, just bring Delano up to speed, Iman, and then so we could continue.
Right. So Dr. Chapman's been explaining the variation in frequencies and how specifically going into further detail on how microwaves can heat things up, how that energy is transferred and experienced thermally in terms of excitation of the electrons in the atoms of any material that absorbs that or is in, is in reach of these microwaves. But the critical piece is the power, which we want to keep in reference, is the power, the wattage.
Yeah.
And
yeah, the power that's being generated is significant, right? In terms of that, is that, like I said earlier, the closer you are to the source, the more power it's going to be. So where we in the community are concerned, right? When these things are going up all around us, right? For instance, I could go out of my porch and I can see 2 towers, right, that are in my neighborhood. And as we go forward with with the terminology, see, the unfortunate part about all of this is that from time back in memoriam, collateral damage is the issue. The collateral damage says that if we have to sacrifice this, and that, so that the better part of the population benefits, then let's go ahead and do whatever it is that we want to do. And I can say to you that from time and going back way back from the beginning of time, right? So what? You have a world war, and 1 million people die in the war, but the benefit for all those people who have survived, right, are prepared to deal with it. How many of us would be prepared to sacrifice the technology that we have, right, because of the things that we may be talking about, how it's going to be impacting on us, right? We're right now using technology that's a part of the problem that says to us, right, for the convenience of what we want to do, we're prepared to live with it. So at the end of the day, right, everything that's ever happened by mankind has been developed with respect to having consideration or lack of consideration for the environmental damage or the collateral damage that's imposed on the communities.
Yes, exactly. Did you want to?
Doctor's back. Go ahead, Doc. Go ahead, Dr. Roots. You open your mic.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, got you now.
Okay. Over here we have a what's it called? We pay for the electricity. What's it called? You know, pay as you go.
Okay.
So the electricity cut off just now, so my wife went to top it up and whatever.
Okay,
so right now I'm on my hotspot, but I'm not. The Wi-Fi router should kick back in, so hopefully there's not a lag. And this is actually a good segue because as Elder Ingham was saying, even though I am somebody who's into natural health, I'm someone that is very consciously aware of the electromagnetic growing amount of electromagnetic radiation that is around us. That's not to say I should be fearful or we should be fearful about using it. Right now I'm using my hotspot. I have Wi-Fi in my house and so on and so on. It's about educating ourselves so that we are aware and understand what precautions and what limits we need to put on ourselves. Okay, that's a very important piece that he was talking about. How much of the different things that have developed over time will be willing to sacrifice, and we don't really want to sacrifice anything, but we definitely don't want to sacrifice our health. If I could go back into the biological effects. Okay, so I was talking about the non-ionizing effects. Now, the thing with the FCC in the United States, the World Health Organization, I think it's ICNAP over here, which is the International Commission for Non-Ionization and Radiation Protection or something like that. They have all of these international bodies which have set guidelines for our safe use, okay? Now, but what we need to understand is that in many cases, people are not using the devices in the way that we are instructed to use them safely. That's the first thing, okay? So as I became more aware of how to use, or what the electromagnetic radiation was coming off of the Wi-Fi, off of the phones, off of now our laptops, it made more conscious.
It made me more conscious. Just having issues there. Iman's going.
No, I hit the button by mistake.
Okay,
I booted everybody else out.
Huh?
Looks like we lost Tesla.
You made him say you hit somebody?
Yeah, I hit I logged out altogether. I hit the button and logged myself out, but I don't know what happened with Tesla.
It could be his powered situation. Kicking back in.
Possibly. You're right, and it's getting between the two. Yeah. So,
what he was saying there is absolutely right with respect to this technology, because for instance there are in the U.S. in actual fact they passed a law in the U.S. that says that nobody, no public member, no organization can offer objections to the development of technology as it relates to this communication stuff. So or cause it to stop because of its potential harmful effect, right? that's in the law now. So if I'm an individual, I can't complain about some technical company that wants to develop this technology, because at the end of the day, we're talking about billions and billions of dollars of profit being going to be made by some organization, right? And the issue is, like I said earlier, the collateral damage is not the direct concern. Because if in Bermuda, for instance, everywhere you look on television, everybody's walking down the street with a cell phone or something in their hand, right? And the unfortunate part about this is that we can't do without it. And as we go to this 5G stuff, they say it doesn't need as much energy to make it work. But what it does need, right, is far more devices to get it to where it needs to go. So while we may be having cellular towers that may be a mile apart, with this new technology, they need to be 2 blocks apart, right, for it to continue on. And I'm saying, while you may not have the type of energy that's being emanating from the source, you're going to have more of it in more areas that you least expect to have it, right? So at the same time, right, with this 5G stuff, what we're talking about is right now everybody was complaining about the 2G, 3G, 4G, right? This 5G stuff that we're all concerned about is now the past technology. 4G was traveling at 30 milliseconds, right? 30 milliseconds, right? A minute. Now this 5G is supposed to be able to go at 1 millisecond a minute. So the latency of it all, it means that and all for the purpose of speed, your signal is going to get to you. You're going to be able to get access to the stuff quicker. There's not going to be all these delays like those things that we're experiencing now.
Right now.
So I'm saying, for the people who want this technology to go forward, right, this is in their interest. The fact that you want to be able to go on your Game Boy and push a button and have an immediate reaction. You want the Game Boy slowing down and you don't get to kill your enemy because it's slow technology. Then you come to, by the time you come up online again, your Game Boy, your man is laying on the ground, has been shot already by somebody in some remote spot that's playing the game along with you. You see, and at the end of the day, this is the reality of it all, right? It's here to stay. It's going to get worse, right? Because lots of the parts of the world are saying, okay, there's not enough research. You can't. How do you do the research on technologies that doesn't exist? What's the long-term ramification, right? So in terms of lots of places in the world, the World Health Organization, for instance, are currently studying and looking at the effect, because they're not convinced that this stuff should be rolled out. So the criteria for what they're researching now is that they're going to look to see what types of tumors that may cause, the impact it's going to have on your eyes, your sleep, your memory, and your headaches. There's also a report that says that if a person has a deficiency, let's say, for instance, you're blind. If you walk into a space as a blind person, right, you're going to know right away as a blind person, according to the studies, that they're in an environment that's highly radiational. You see? Because they feel a different thing from what we feel, right? Because those senses of sight go away, but they have the sense of feel and those sensitivities get increased. Yeah, so they can feel the warmth of the environment that they're in by the radiation that's in that environment.
Yeah. Am I back on?
Yes, you are.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're tag teaming here. So, and as Elder Ingham says, and we spoke about this, myself and Brother Iman, that what we're calling 5G doesn't really exist right now, okay? So we're trying to look to the future, because that's the challenge that we've done in the past. We haven't seen things in the future coming, and so we haven't been prepared for it. 5G, the ultimate goal of 5G, 5G meaning 5th generation, is to have those higher bytes per second, as Elder Ingham was saying. So in order to accomplish that, they need to use higher frequency waves, okay? The 5G that they would like to use in the future okay, will be using 60 gigahertz waves. This is the real concern. That right there is the real concern.
Yes.
The 5G that
Yes.
people have now, for example, in England, in America, is what they're calling 5G LTE or 5G.
4G LTE.
I'm sorry, 4G LTE, and people are labeling it as 5G. Is not the 5G of the future. They're using a higher frequency, yes, and they're using an antenna array, which allows input and output along multiple antennas, which is giving like a 5G effect. And they are still achieving this higher bandwidth that they want to achieve. But the 5G in the future, as we said, will need to use a higher frequency. And as I said, as you use higher frequencies, your penetrating power, or the distance that the waves can travel, gets less. So that means you need more antennas. With more antennas means more exposure. The whole thing about radiation, as he said right from the beginning, is about limiting your exposure. People run this line, this dub, all the time about the sun. And the sun is giving all of this radiation, so on and so on. Let's put that myth to rest, okay? Because any top physicist will know that the sun is emitting the whole spectrum of electromagnetic waves. Yes, that's very true. However, between the sun, electromagnetic waves do not need a medium to travel on. So they can travel right through space and come right towards the Earth. That's right. However, between the sun and then space and us, we have the atmosphere. We have water molecules in the atmosphere. We have all of these different things that end up filtering, okay? That filter a lot of the harmful rays from the sun. UV light is not harmful to certain people compared to how it's harmful to other people. So UV light can be dangerous to some, but we need UV light in order to produce vitamin D, or the hormone what they call vitamin D. Even radio waves, not all of them are transmitted by the sun through the atmosphere. Hence why you can bounce, as Elder Ingham said, you can bounce radio waves off of the atmosphere. So this whole idea that the sun is giving us all this energy and we shouldn't be afraid of it because the sun is giving it to us is a straw man argument. It's not valid. Okay, you couldn't use that argument against people that know what they're really talking about. Now, so what I'm trying to say is that when it comes to radiation, the whole thing to do with safety is all based around exposure. We need to limit your exposure. So that's why your granny or the companies tell you need to limit the time that you spend on a mobile phone. You need to limit the time that you spend next to the Wi-Fi. You need to limit the time next to the mobile phone antennas. But if we cannot limit exposure because there are so many devices around us, these small cells that are emitting the 5G in the future, you can't go up there and turn it off. Okay, if it's every block or whatever, every 20 meters or whatever, the exposure that you're going to have is very hard to model that cumulative effect in a lab. Not only that, we have to understand that now Bermuda, you don't see this yet because Bermuda is behind the times with most things in current terms of technology. We get things very late. Okay. But in the where I am right now in London, all of the street lamps are controlled by little transmitters on top, little antennas. That's what they are, the little mobile phone antennas. And I've written to the company, which happens to be, I think it's Panasonic, to ask them about the sort of antenna system, smart city system. And it's great. It allows them to have real-time interfacing with all of their street lights, okay? But the reality is that on all of those street lights, you have a little mobile phone antenna. Now, I'm not saying that they're dangerous because all of the antennas are certified and they have a certain compliance and stuff like that. However, the point I'm trying to make is that as we surround ourselves with more of these devices, you have the smart TV, your mobile phone, your smart Hoover or vacuum cleaner, as we'd say. Your refrigerator's going to be smart. Your car's going to be smart. Your street lights are smart. Our exposure continues to go up, up, and up. When you put that on top of now the high density small antenna systems that they hope to deploy for the 5G of the future, there's not been any testing on that. They're still relying on the testing that they done, 10, 20 years ago. And as Alda said, they're trying to go with some testing now, but it's not going to be for many years that they will know the results of this testing. Okay, I don't want to talk too much, so break in if
Okay, yeah, jumping in on it. But reflecting on a piece both of you are speaking on, a trend or the as when we had the historical perspective that Delano was providing, we noticed a trend that we had the 1,000-watt AM radio transmitter, right?
Yeah.
That was 1,000 watts. Then shifted to the ultra high frequency for TV, which needed more power. So the limit was taken up to 2,000 watts, so to enable that equipment to be used, 2,000 watts. And these systems are how many antennas and how far away? Do you know of the recommendations that you should be away from those systems?
Remember, as I said, the antenna. This is where the people in the mobile phone industry will kind of say that the amount of wattage is going to be very, very low coming out of those small cells. Okay, so and the governmental bodies internationally, what they do is they look at a danger limit. They establish what a danger limit is in the lab. And they say, well, this limit is causing an issue. They do this with chemicals as well, as you know. So they say, this limit is causing issue. So that means we're going to work at 1,000 times lower. What's that?
Dosage.
That's right. So they're going to work at 1,000 times lower than that to set a limit, okay? And then the mobile phone companies are going to say that the amount that is coming out of the mobile phones is even lower than that. Okay, and so I would expect that the small antennas and all of that will be within their safe limits. Okay, however, as we're saying, the cumulative effects are not being looked at. Okay, number two, from what I call an environmental justice point of view, people that live in certain areas will be more exposed to radiation, as is now, based off of their socioeconomic status. So if more antennas are going to be needed in high density areas, that means the people in those high density areas are going to be exposed more. So as we know, for example, a lot of these antennas are nested on people's houses or in people's neighborhood. In a Bermuda context, you will not see any in Turkestan, and you're not going to see any in certain parts of Paget, because the people are not going to stand for that in those areas. The people Go ahead.
Real quick, let's jump in and let's get a little bit of engagement from some of our viewers.
Yes.
We have one a commenter that's saying we don't need 5G for connectivity. Any close proximity, small cells next to homes and schools where children who are most vulnerable should be prohibited! Exclamation point. Several countries have laws around this and have much safer standards. She goes on to say public health is not being protected by planning, the RA, or environmental health in this issue currently. A collaborative approach would ensure this, with critical input needed from the Environmental Health Department, like we did have at one time in Bermuda. So those both were from one viewer. We also have one of our top fans, Kai, saying, I've seen a video in the U.S. of one that looks like a tree, disguised of a cell tower to look like a tree. And then someone else goes on to say, couldn't agree more. No to any close proximity small cell and 5G in Bermuda. And just to go on that, as I was talking about the trends a bit and the power, because there's the concept of the inverse square law, which I would definitely, if Delano, you could comment on specific. You've already mentioned it indirectly, but if you could comment on that, and then possibly Dr. Chapman give me clarification also.
Well, I think that first off, we need to know that with the technology, right now that we're using, whatever the infrastructure is for 5G has to be 5 times as much as already exists. Now, think about that in terms of the organizations themselves, right? The companies that exist in Bermuda now, right? They all have their private infrastructures. So now, if we talk about 3 or 4 companies all doing the same thing, then multiply that there by the 4, and then you get some idea. What this all does to you, though, it brings the technology that we're now all talking about closer to you, right? Because of the short distances it's going to travel. So instead of having like I said earlier, a tower 100 yards, 500 yards away from you, you're talking about having it 200 yards, right, or less away from you. So I'm saying, and then multiplying that each time by 5. You see, the way this stuff works, right? Well, let me just say this first. The whole purpose of the technology, right? When we talking about it, we were initially talking about in terms of the development, mobile phones, right? So you can have communications outside of your home or outside of your office. And they quickly realize that, okay, why can't I go inside my office and talk on my same phone? Okay, you need a different type of technology. You need more power. You need to be able to have these things closer together. Cells are these things that are what we call, the signals hop from one to the other. And wherever the signal is the strongest, it hops to the next one that's stronger. So now here's your problem. You can't use, so people can say, okay, since I need to be able to get some technology that allows me to use my cell phone in my office. So they develop that technology. Then all of a sudden now the technology for landlines, all that type of stuff goes out the window. So now they're now trying to develop something that not only do you want to use it in your, use the technology in your office, you want to use it for doing all these other things simultaneously, right? So that you can have it everywhere you go. So herein lies the problem. The telephone line concept, right, is gone. What happens though with this new technology is that the old technology that's associated with 2G, 3G, and 4G is still going to be a part of it, right? So what I'm saying is, how do you get from one spot to the next, right? What technology is going to use it? For instance, if there's a cell tower outside my house and I send my signal to that cell tower, how does that signal now get to the next tower? How does it get to the head end so that we can have the...
2, 3, 4. Creation. Fresh. As a baby. Yeah, baby.
And whether that environment is going to be sufficiently safe, because no one has been able to do a study, right? You never figured that when they introduce cars, right, that you would have the pollution that you have. And because of this pandemic, California is realizing they can actually see the sky because of the pollution has dropped down to nothing because nobody's going to work to do this stuff, right? But now what happens? All these people now who will bring that technology home so they can operate from home, where's that coming from? What are they using? Let me get my stuff closer to those people in the house so they can sit in their home, in their bedroom and do my office work, right? These are the environmental considerations.
Could I
right?
Ask a question? Especially on one of the big things is like you're saying, picking up on no study. and Dr. Chapman, definitely I know would be looking at this, especially being also into health. One is looking at what you talked about in the shift of one poison to the next. For instance, when everybody says, okay, we can stay home and work, we're going to save the ozone, right? At the same time, they're inviting the new poison, which says, see, there's this need to make sure you have this technology.
Absolutely.
And what you're doing. The second piece is looking at Bermuda, because this is where we are, and I know people are appreciating this conversation because of that, is the audit on where we are right now. Delano, you have seen the years of expansion of waves, of airwaves being clouded with, with frequencies. So you've watched it come from being a radio thing to telecoms doing pages to cell phones, right? To 1G, 2G, and so on and so forth. Where are we in an audit that says, hey, listen, Bermuda's footprint and the way we have power and frequency in this small environment, what's the capacity do we have to continue to fill it with these airwaves that are just not livable for us to have, safe and healthy lives? I think it's a big question, but I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. Do we know, are we at this point that we're already so dangerous in Bermuda?
Well, we have the threat definitely exists, right? The unfortunate part about it, as far as those people who I'm going to leave behind, is that there's no handle on it, right? Because the development right now, it takes us right. When we talk about X-ray frequencies, gamma rays, right? The next thing is nuclear. So I'm saying is that they must have to stop somewhere short of nuclear so that the whole world don't blow up with the technology. You see, and I'm saying that, and this is all about the same sort of technology that we're talking about with respect to radio waves, all these types of things, right? What do they need to develop this stuff? The unfortunate part about it, right? I can say to you that in New Jersey, where they had where the Edison company is, right? The people who are living in an environment are being born with defects. They're trying to find out why they're having these. Well, it's the radiation that's impacting on them, right? Having children born with no limbs, right? People being born with two heads and stuff like that there because of the environment that they're in, the impact. But no one has been able to do the study to say what that's going to be. So if I have to prove to you in terms of time what impact it's going to have, I can't tell you. I told the telecommunication officer of Bermuda, when I talked to him about radiation, like I said earlier, he says, well, prove it. Well, the proof is important because there are people who have succumbed because of what I said to them way back then was an issue, right? And I'm saying the proof now is long gone. And those people who were in the environment are gone. So now what? How do we measure all of that stuff, right? And when do we say enough's enough?
Dr. Chapman?
I think I was just thinking about your question. As we all do, I have family, I have friends who are in that industry in Bermuda, okay? So it's in their interest, obviously, to see the future. And we might have children who are employed in those industries, rather at a service level in the retail aspect, in the mobile phone industry, or rather at an engineering level or whatever, okay? So I wanted to say that we need to think about who is driving the technology and what is the aim, the ultimate aim of the driver, okay? So what I'm saying is that when it comes to technology, a lot of things are pushed down into the population because systems are put in place above it. And if you want to participate in the global system, then you need to buy into that technology. So for a lot of these people that are going to push it in Bermuda, their aim may be just to set up their company, or it might be so that they can, make money, or it might be so that they can, do the things that they want to do. And there are a lot of positives that will come from increasing the bandwidth and the upload links and stuff. For example, FreshTV might say, listen, this is going to be great because we can deliver our message much quicker. I was speaking to an anonymous person online, and they were saying about how they, as a disabled person, some of the technology that they could potentially use would help them to live their lives a lot better, and so on, right? So those things are quite benign. However, what I'm trying to say, though, is that, as you said, as we as consumers think things are quite benign, the cumulative effect that we might feel in the population could have a negative effect. And the driver of it, you might think is benign, but the drive of it behind the technology might not be as benign as you think. So, for example, in a national scale, looking at Bermuda, which is still a colony, okay, they might find that for example, the same thing has happened, and Elder Ingham can mention this. The same thing has happened with digital TV. You cannot, even if you had an analog TV, you can't use it now because you're not going to pick up any signals, because digital technology is now the universal standard for sending out the television signals, okay? So it's the same thing with these devices. As the companies that make the phone, Samsung, iPhone, or whatever, as they move to the 5G, because we need to understand it's not just going to be the infrastructure that is physically that you see mobile phones. It's also going to be the devices also that will change in order to accommodate this, all right, to accommodate the new 5G. And so the safety limits that have been put in place for old technology will obviously have to change and have to operate differently than the new ones, right? So eventually you may have to move to a 5G setup because, for example, they might say, well, really we're moving to a society that doesn't use cash anymore, and in order to make that interchange quickly, we need to have this 5G technology. So the banks now say all of our credit card machines, whatever those things are called, they're going to operate on 5G speed or so on and so on. So we need to look not just at our individual desires. We need to not just look at our national interests, but also at the strategic reasons why these things are being pushed. Now, I can do a quick segue to say, please go watch my video on 5G on YouTube on David Roots TV, because at the end of that video, the most important part of the video, I talk about how 5G is more than just a new technology to help consumers. 5G is being developed as a strategic technology by international bodies to help them have more control and more data for the population. That's what 5G is really about.
Because that note, you open up. Let's try to stay on what we can tackle within 3 hours. We know you like to go for 3 hours. Just give another plug for your video. You got a master class that's available on your channel, and to go into depth on a lot of those concepts. And we'll revisit it. We'll definitely have a segment where we'll look at the political impacts, the privacy issues, and whatnot, that are all severe implications and will alter the way economies can function, and
the way humans function.
Yeah, the invasiveness. You can look at it as in terms of the invasiveness of this technology and how much it's going to integrate into your everyday life, to the point of you becoming a transmitter and having microchips or tattoo, or
not microchips, RFID devices.
Yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah,
right.
RFID,
That's
RFID devices.
Which they already do.
So what's that RFID device? What's that? Talk. Break it down for us, please.
RF is radio frequency device, basically.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And ID is just identification, and all it's doing is it has no power source in it. So when it comes within an electrical field, it is triggered to emit a signal just saying who, and just with basic information on it, very small. It doesn't transmit a lot of information, these RFIDs, but they're going to be ubiquitous. And they're on the way. I am hopefully do my part to make sure my children kept, and myself and my children are kept free from any involuntary offers. I say offers because there's some hidden. You may have to sign up for one thing, and before you know it, out of that small print in some legal capacity,
That's right.
You don't know what you signed up for, which was some form of this. Like I said, even to a tattoo, there's versions of it that you don't even have to have the actual chip in you. It's just a tattoo on you that may wear off in a certain amount of time or whatnot. But it allows you to be identified in a similar system like a UPC code or whatnot.
Yeah.
But tagging so we want to keep these separate. Let's keep these segments separate, and let's go into that. So around studies, I want to stress. I go into a bit because that's definitely steps into aspects of the field I can speak on. Say it again.
I said Elmo was what's Elmo saying?
Okay.
Want to hear the comment? Somebody want to make a comment? You want to hear it?
Yeah. You can jump.
All right. Go ahead, caller.
Yeah. Hey, man. Hey, good morning. Yeah. So I just want to step back for a minute because I did a little experiment a couple of years ago. I just got back on Facebook, but I divorced myself from everything. Cut myself off completely. Yeah. Phone, Facebook, nothing. No computer, no. I did what they call went off the grid. Isn't it? Got me?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, please. Go ahead, please.
Yeah. So my question to you is, what would that look like where you guys are taking the conversation? So when this next phase comes, see, I'm not going to be able to do that there because unless I get cash, because cash is not going to be happening no more. So I'm not going to be able to divorce myself from the system. Okay, I'll listen. I'll listen off. You got me?
Yeah,
cool?
I think that's the next round of conversation that I think your mom wants to.
Yeah.
That's deep.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, you see, Elmore and company. Here's the issue. I spent the whole week trying to stop all my devices from syncing. Now, I don't want all my devices syncing, right? So that everything that shows up on my phone, on my computer, on my whatever, and it's in the cloud somewhere, right? And I'm saying that's not technology that I want, right? But they've imposed it on me, right? So it took me a whole week to stop it from synchronizing. I had to go and find I even inside my computer into areas that people are not supposed to go, and to be able to find a way of stopping everything that I do from synchronizing, right? So I'm saying the technology that these people are getting in your lap is that it allows them to keep a track on everything that you do, everywhere that you go, right? I go on Amazon, I buy something on Amazon, and then I get a ton of questions or offers from everywhere in the world because they saw that I looked at a lawnmower on Amazon, right? Privacy is not about privacy anymore. Whatever you say and or do is a worldwide commodity. It belongs to everybody, right? So somewhere later, 20 years from now, somebody can look at this, what we're doing here, as some old technology. Look at them old fools. Look what they're saying about what we're doing, right? And this stuff will be minute to where the technology is going to take us. So, Iman?
Yeah, yes, you ran into it again. Let's try to keep the privacy because that's a lot. That's a big section, and I know everybody could go off on that one. Let's. So about these studies.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I know that's that one wants to get into that one.
Let's talk about the studies.
Right. So let's get into these studies. So the difficulty with studies is Dr. Chapman, is on isolating any particular type of radiation over an extended period of time. There's two factors make it really difficult to do studies that so you can study one particular source of radiation, right? But the problem is that you have so many, and you're going to have more and more. Yeah, it's just it's going to be it's ubiquitous now. It's a point I want to stress, but I'm not going to go too far down there.
Not only that, as many of the people who are way more experienced, way more professional in the field than I am, some of the concern is that you also cannot effectively model the way that the electromagnetic signals are given off by phones. So, for example, the microwaves from a mobile phone and from the Wi-Fi router and from these cells, they are what they call them pulsed signals. So they're not just one beam just coming out constantly, so on and so on. Okay.
Real quick on that. That's one piece I'm hearing a lot in the literature, but that's how electromagnetic waves function. They are waves, right, which means they have waves. They're gonna have a frequency. So now you can have pulses on top of pulses.
Pulses on top of pulses.
Okay, so right. So that's what I
we're not talking about the nature of the electromagnetic waves, which is the oscillating electric field and an oscillating magnetic field.
Exactly.
We're talking about that the distribution. If I was a boxer, I'm on the punching bag, I'm just punching at a certain frequency, boom, boom, boom. That's different than me giving combinations.
Right.
You might be more prepared for that punching bag if I'm just coming at you at a certain uniform, monotone sort of pulsation. But if I come at you with combinations, then that now is going to have a different impact on biological tissue. So that is one thing. Look, you can find, as it is with all science, you can find numerous studies which show that radiation from mobile phones and mobile phone technology is safe. And you can find just as many studies which talk about radiation from mobile phone and mobile phone technology can be hazardous, okay? You can find both. And even some of the studies that say they're safe, in the same study, like the interference study, will say that there are some danger effects, however, and they give a however in there. So this is why the reality is in terms, someone needs to mute. This is why in terms of the reality is we need to make sure that we limit our exposure, in particular to those people that are young. Okay?
Yes.
So we know that there are baby monitors, for example, and people giving their mobile phones and tablets to children. And they're not been tested for children. They're tested for adults. What would the impact be from these cell phone towers and these mobile phone small cells be on people that are not adults, for example? What will the impact be in settings like schools? Israel has already banned the use of Wi-Fi in the lower school years because they don't want any dangerous effects to the young developing brains and systems. So when it talks about studies, there are definite studies out there that show that mobile phones in general I don't know. There's an echo for some reason, but
Yeah, I'm not sure.
But what I'm saying is that this is the question. This is my sort of my debate question when I'm talking to somebody who's in the industry. If you had two houses, right, Brother Gibbons? If I gave you, I said, I have two mansions for you, incredible houses. Everything about them was identical. They were the house of your dreams. But one had a mobile phone tower next to it, and one didn't. Which house would you live in? Okay? And invariably, even the person that is, you know, staunch, a mobile phone advocate, it doesn't cause any harm, it's not a problem. They're going to say, you know what, I'll go with the other house, just so that there's no risk. There's no risk. So the point is we need to do as much to limit our exposure, because there are multiple studies out there that show that exposure to electromagnetic radiation that's non-ionizing can have negative effects, including carcinogenic effects.
Somebody's got to mute their mic.
Yeah, I'm on mute. And we got a little bit of echo situation.
Yeah, I put myself on mute, making sure it wasn't me, but somebody needed to be on mute because we got an echo.
Right, I'm not sure. I got my headphones on myself, so. Yeah, the carcinogenic effect of non-ionizing radiation. We don't quite know the mechanism yet. We got a little bit of, I think, yeah. Let me mute.
Yeah, the mechanism.
We're not sure the mechanism. That we haven't been. It hasn't been elucidated. Like it hasn't been made clear what mechanism exactly it's operating under. But that doesn't mean it's safe. So the lack of evidence doesn't prove innocence in this case. In a sense, the fact that we don't know exactly how it is carcinogenic. And just to say, the studies, what they resulted in is all of these reports compiled, and the CDC and the FCC, which by any means should not be necessarily trusted, but they have categorized it, or the International Society for Cancer Studies. I can't remember the
National Toxicology Program.
Yes.
Has recently shown a direct effect of mobile phone radiation or radio frequency causing cancer in rats. Okay,
but it's called.
That's one of the most.
No, I was just gonna say it's referred to as possibly carcinogenic.
What's that?
But that's not that it's
it
classified as two. Yeah, only ranking it's 2B.
Okay.
Which says possibly carcinogenic. Which means there's evidence enough that warrants further studies, but we don't know any mechanism if it is causing cancer and how it's operating. So it just requires all the statements that we require further study to establish if it's carcinogenic or not. That rating. Now that's not to say that rating should be trusted, or you know what I mean. FCC and CDC have done us wrong before. So I just taking that, I'm just giving the background behind that actual reference point. The individual studies were able to demonstrate different processes, but we don't understand the actual mechanism.
I want to jump in on that, because you being within the medical field, and many of us will understand, and this is something, as you said, could take a whole weeks, but we as living things, living human organisms, we are bioelectric organisms, okay? So it is one of the topics really dear to my heart. It really gets me passionate about understanding my place in the universe, my place in the world. When you understand human physiology, and me being a chemist, everything just starts to link together. But human physiology, we operate due to electricity, okay? And all of our tissues, right from the beginning, from when we don't have tissue, we're just a cell, where you just have an egg and a sperm that are coming together. the only way they're able to function is due to the movement of electrons and the electrochemical reactions that happen that allow physiology to happen. And obviously those people that are deep in the field as medical doctors and so on and so on, they will understand all of these things at a much higher level than I ever will. So some of the concerns, for example, relating to a moving electromagnetic wave is not only how it interacts on a non-ionizing basis, i.e. the heating effect, but also how it might impact with the electrical components of our body. So you hear them talk about calcium channels, voltage-gated calcium channels, which is one thing they're kind of picking up on, not because there's nothing else that's electrically influenced in our body, but just because the movement of calcium across these channels is so important for physiology. And that when electromagnetic waves interact with ions, basically, that these different ions can act as small antennas, meaning that you say attenuation, they can pick it up and be affected by it. And so we as bioelectric organisms, it isn't clear fully how having all of this radiation, electromagnetic radiation, is impacting us on the minute levels. As you say, it might not manifest itself in a cancer. It might not manifest itself in a headache, but it might manifest itself in other ways that we're not clear of, just as we were not clear about the existence of dark matter, that scientists are now realizing, well, most of the universe seems to be made up of matter that they can't even detect. You know, they're using the maths and the astrophysics, and they're able to literally physically state that there is matter that we can't detect, but it seems to make up most of the universe. And so these are the same considerations that us, as bioelectric beings, in particular, within the African descendant community, people of African descent, who have a unique relationship with the sun, where we need more of the sun to produce vitamin D. If we don't get the sun, we cannot produce vitamin D on the levels. And the darker you are, the more of the sun you have, which is at the opposite spectrum for people of lighter skin that don't need as much. So I'm talking about bioelectricity. I'm not trying to make this a race thing. I'm talking about the fact that us as bioelectric beings, there's a lot that's not understood. And it's really kind of arrogant of people to think that they know. When they tell me, oh, everything about mobile phone safety, we know already, they're completely safe. Any technology we develop will be safe. That is very arrogant, because we don't know everything about the human body. We hardly know, we're scratching the surface. For all of the knowledge that we do have, we're still scratching the surface of the understanding of the human body and how it operates.
Surely, and I'm not offended that I'm the only light skinned one on the panel. I'm not gonna take it personal. But on a level, yeah, definitely the amount of melanin that we have in our skin affects the concentration of sunlight that can penetrate to the layers of the dermis, where there's vitamin D substrates. Where they are, right? So it definitely it has a big impact. But another key piece in that we are electrochemical, that component, and there was not a study, but a scientist was reflecting on the process, and actually out of Nigeria that I caught this. Actually, it was an environmental scientist. That had a lot of interest in this whole field, and he was mentioning how how oxygen is particularly affected by that in that 60 gigahertz frequency range. That's the key one we were speaking about. Where oxygen is affected and can be altered. The spin of the electrons can be altered, so that it's not enough energy. Right, we're in the non-ionizing realm, so it's not doesn't have enough energy per photon to cause an electron to be ejected from the atomic structure. So that's why it's called non-ionizing. But there's evidence that there's enough energy to alter the spin of these electrons, particularly on oxygen, thus making it not useful or highly or less absorbable or reaction, decreasing the reaction with iron in our hemoglobin molecules, right, in our bloodstream. So it affects our ability to absorb oxygen, potentially. He wasn't able to demonstrate it, but he said he's particularly interested in it and pursuing that field. So there is definite mechanisms that are being studied, but it's just indefinite right now, and we're in this limbo space. And that's why we're having this forum here, and we're going to continue and continue these type of discussions. So we, as Bermudians, we're not just passively following, you know what I mean? We want to increase the general knowledge of our Bermudian people and worldwide, because you can tune in worldwide. I'm sure you'll put it out to your UK compatriots and whatnot, and let's get these type of conversations going on wherever we find people on melanin or people that are underrepresented in government and regulatory authorities that, you know, based on where they live or the economic structure, they tend to have more exposure to these type of things.
You want to be able to drive the conversation, not let the conversation drive you. You want to be able to drive the infrastructure so that it works for you in your best interest and in the interest of your family. That's what I was trying to get to earlier. I wasn't taking us off into the whole control aspect, but I was talking about who is driving the conversation. We can, we need to be able to drive the conversation rather than let the retailers and so on. And we can, and this isn't, I'm not anti-capitalist at all. I'm actually the opposite. So we need to be able to drive the conversation with our purchasing power, with our concerns, and make things work towards us.
That's a good point. And I think as we're talking about the conversation and how we're doing that, I mean, this is now a global conversation. We're localizing a global conversation, right? And look at it. I mean, look at the bridges of time and history, right? Our story from a melanated perspective coming to a global perspective, regardless. David's over in the UK. Hopefully, it expands the conversation for him and his thing, and we bring everybody together. Yesterday, I was involved in a conversation. You know how you find it difficult to break into, even though the internet is supposed to be global. Have you realized, thought about how difficult it is to break into other people's communities, even on the internet? So you're on the internet, and you'll see this long chain of events going on, and you say something, but you can't break in. It's weird. And yesterday, for the first time, after pounding and pounding into a presidential live, right, with the president, I actually got responses. And it was
hello. I gotta stop you there. So you was on some Trump. You got over me for the video.
Yes, I did go into some Trump. I did. It was through one of my media. It was through one of my media sources. What they're doing is they're using that to get Garner into their brand. It's a media source, right, of distribution. One of my distributors. But the point is that what we're saying about the communities and getting together, Iman, what we're talking about, reaching across. It's difficult to break those boundaries. And yesterday, after pounding, and I stayed on the health tip, I said, why are you focusing on Trump and his stuff when you're losing lives because nobody's doing pre-medical, pre-healing, pre-talk about how we keep people alive? And finally it came through. So that was a big piece, I think, in terms of what pounding and getting out a different message. You know what I mean? Getting out that free, unadulterated message. And David, I want you to answer this question for me. Have you had problems keeping that particular presentation masterclass up? Because I can't get it now.
I just sent out the link.
Yeah, but I can't.
gotta
But
know.
I couldn't get it. I've tried a couple of times now since Delano couldn't get it, and then I couldn't get it. So I don't know if there's any problem. You still get it, Iman?
It's up. It's up. I sent and I put the link in the chat.
Okay.
You can click on the link. I'm got it up. It's running.
Okay,
It's not.
because
It hasn't been.
I couldn't get it.
Well, there has been, just speaking on that, there has been a big, if you follow any of these 5G conversations and you get down into the nooks and crannies, there's a tremendous backlash on how YouTube is censoring anything where 5 and G is put together. The people are stating, "Oh, my video is going down. I can't access this video. I can't." You know what I mean? So it's a big backlash out there for anybody speaking out about 5G and particularly connecting it to coronavirus directly, or saying that there's some, ulterior motive with which is why I definitely, and that's a major piece. Definitely want to leave that to that. There's implications to a bigger, to a whole session or several sessions, because it goes really, really deep.
One more question here.
Uh-huh.
A question from a viewer. It says, "Are the earplugs any safer that they're developing now that they have? Are the earplugs any safer than having your phone to your ear?" That's from a caller.
It's a headset, like a cell phone headset.
Well, the earplugs. You got the wireless earplugs. You have duplex.
Earbuds. I think they mean
earplugs.
earbuds.
Earbuds. Right. Plugs. Buds. Yeah. Are they any safer, Dr. Chapman? I guess. I don't know. Anybody?
I would say that what we need to understand is that this is the trend moving towards wireless devices. We have our wireless speakers, we have our wireless headsets, and so on, and they all operate with Bluetooth, and Bluetooth uses a form of uses radiation, electromagnetic radiation as well. But the power of the headsets is very small, yes, and they will have safety ratings. They would have been rated for a certain amount of use. But this is the thing that I was mentioning earlier, that rarely, for example, my stepson, who is right next to, he can hear me talking, he doesn't take his headsets off, literally. His headsets, he wears 24 hours a day as a young person. He's 18, wow. And he's listening to music. He broke his earbuds, so I don't think he has earbuds. He has the normal ones, so on and so on. But many of the young people, the way they use devices is not to the same safety standards that the companies rate them for.
Okay.
So for me, once I started to use, one of the best things you can do for people who are concerned is you go out and you can buy a meter, a little meter like this. Let's see if I can take it out of the bag. But anyway, it's a little EMF meter, okay? And let's see. It's not coming out. Hold on a minute. Here we go. Yeah, so it's a little meter just like this. Okay, I'm not endorsing any particular product.
Right.
There's several online and stuff like that. And what that does is it's a tool. It's an educational tool that allows you to understand these invisible waves that are a huge part of our life. When you are giving, this is what I tell people. I do a lot of farming, as you know, and my children like to come out. The first thing a child wants to do is use the tool, isn't it? They want to use the pitchfork. They want to use the machete. They want to use the biggest tool. They want to push the lawnmower and all that. Would you go to your child, even though you use the lawnmower, the pitchfork, the machete, and you know how to use it safely, would you say, yeah, go ahead, just use it? You wouldn't, would you?
No.
But that's what we do with our electric devices. Oh, you want to use the phone? Go ahead, go on the phone, go on the tablet. We don't understand, because we don't understand ourselves, the types of radiation coming off. We're very flippant about our use. So something like this is just a way to measure and understand more. Oh, when I go very close to my Wi-Fi, it goes off the chart, my Wi-Fi router, bing, 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 bing. But when I stand back, oh, okay, I can see that that's, much less radiation exposure. When I'm next to my microwave oven, it goes off the chart, oh, I thought microwaves are shielded. Turns out they're not as shielded as good as we thought. So when people say don't stand next to the microwave, it's probably a good idea. You know, you don't use your microwave oven that much, you know, fortunately, but you get the point. So with something like the little headsets, go online, do the research, you know, look at the studies, measure it for yourself and see. Take this something like this around to the towers in your neighborhood. That's what I've done. I've taken them around. People look at me strange. They're wondering, what's this guy doing? You know, pointing this thing at the towers and stuff like that. And you will learn things that the industry is not going to tell you. They're not going to tell you some of the things that you learn. Someone accused me of making up the information. You know, a gentleman accused me of making up information. I said, I have a meter right here. You know, he said, oh, you know, this is something you're just making up. Anyway.
Mercy, even with the proof.
Okay.
Y'all know?
Is that?
Hello?
I think you gotta unmute your mic.
Unmute your mic.
Okay. I muted it at that stage. You have to unmute your mic, Dylan. I don't know if you can hear us.
Unmute your mic, Dylan.
You can only do it yourself.
Unmute your mic. Yeah, mic.
I'm not sure why you can't hear us here.
His mic's muted because you can see the little symbol that's
unmute
muted.
your mic.
I'm wondering why he can't hear us. Say it. Or it doesn't know. It's if you look at the bottom of the screen, it's a picture of a microphone there and you can toggle it on and off.
Not sure.
Okay, so
Can't hear you.
you just gotta unmute the mic. Just at the bottom of the screen, next to the
You
red.
probably couldn't see
Hang
because
up.
it's on his.
I'm just maybe. So while he's working that out, we got another comment coming in from our viewers. This is Brother Fernand Caldoun. Just linking in, some neurologists are concerned about the adverse impact on electrons and synapses in white matter of the brain. Any discussion?
So he's talking about something specific. He's talking about impact on electrons and synapses in the white matter of the brain. But as I said earlier, and there's that echo back. We were doing good up to that. As I said earlier, moving electromagnetic waves, these electromagnetic waves, they carry with them electromagnetic energy. So they will interact with anything that is.
Yeah, I had muted his mic earlier because of the background noise when he was touching. Yeah, when he was touching the mic.
They will interact with anything that is electrosensitive, the electromagnetic wave. So the impact on he said the synapses. We know that the nervous system. Okay, let me break it down like this. Then the cancers that they are concerned about from mobile phone radiation usually manifest themselves as schwannomas, or they affect the nerve cells, the cancers of the nerve cells. Okay? So this shows that there's something unique about electromagnetic radiation and the nerves. Well, it's clear that we know that nerves carry electrical signals. So I could see definitely a potential interaction between electromagnetic radiation and nerves, and the interaction of the way electrons move along being affected. And what I want to say before you jump in is any subtle effect to health implications that we might not be able to actually quantify, but someone may actually be able to feel. Hence the whole idea of people being very electrosensitive now, which is a very debatable topic. People think that it's, these people are not electrosensitive. They are just it's just a placebo effect. It's just a psychosomatic effect.
A nocebo effect.
Yeah, exactly. A nocebo effect, something that's psychosomatic. Whereas the people that actually have are complaining about it feel that no, it's very much a real thing for them. So it could be potentially the way that the electromagnetic waves relate to the nervous system that is bringing about these effects. It's not a physical effect per se. It could be, a physiological effect. But that's all just theory. So I would have to look at the research that Brother Khaldun mentioned.
But we had talked about it a bit already. You had spoken on the calcium gated channels and the uptake of which actually the transport of sodium across the membrane for electric potentials, right? So and that's how synapses. Well, that's how a signal is conducted along a nerve ending up to the nerve body. Is through those processes.
Yeah.
So you have those reactions. So to try to keep. So we are electrochemical. There's ions, which are just electrons or charged particles that their concentrations inside and outside of a cell are the trigger for whether that cell is activated or not. So when the calcium gate is opened, sodium flows in and other ions flow in. It changes the gradient across that membrane and thus triggers that cell to be on. So it's electrical and chemical at the same time, because electrical just means charge, right? And chemicals can create a charge when you have a concentration gradient. So, and that's how nervous tissue works. Neurons, that's what they do. That they are facilitators of this electrochemical process. Now, synapses in specific is the interface between two neurons, right? A synapse. So neurons, particularly in white matter, they don't actually come into contact with each other. The signal is transported through neurotransmitters across that space, across that gap. So that's what makes nervous tissue. So just to give some background there, but specifically, I'm referring to the studies that on nervous tissue. What's interesting is that it was predicted that we should have more brain cancers and more tumors, more malignant, what's it called, angiomas and whatnot. But the numbers actually haven't spiked comparable to the amount of devices and the increase in use. So in the 80s and 90s, it's predicted, we're going to see this big increase in brain cancers, right? Now we've got tenfold amount of devices, and we're using them tenfold more times, but the numbers of brain cancers and gliomas, just have not spiked like that. So that's where a little bit of and particularly nervous tissue, which is known to be a particularly sensitive tissue for these type of interferences. We just haven't seen it yet. It's not reflected in the data.
Not for the head piece, but we have had a high amount of but cancer in general in Bermuda.
General cancer is increasing.
It's increasing.
But the issue there is that you've got so many other environmental factors, so many other pollutions, dietary changes. You know what I'm saying? That is hard to filter out and say, okay, this is caused by EMF radiation. That's really problem in the studies, which is what I was trying to allude to. That's what makes it difficult to attribute it directly to it, because we've got so much pollutions and interference with nature per se. You know what I mean? These artificially induced powerful sources or less powerful sources that accumulate. You know what I mean? And in different environments, different demographics, there's so much involved in it that it's hard to just like how a scientist likes a double controlled study, you know what I mean? Double blind, I'm sorry, controlled study. They like a laboratory based where you can isolate and say, this is the cause. And then, you know, the scientific field starts to move when they see those type of double blind studies, which will be requirement for like the vaccines, right? You have to go all the way to a human study and have, you know, sufficient amount of cases and time. You have to allow you can't, that's why this whole quote of a vaccine being available within 6 months is almost ludicrous, because you need time for the study to take place to see the effects of these vaccines. And if that which is a whole nother conversation, and then not trying to go down the road, just creating the correlation of studies, sticking to the concept of studies and how difficult it is to just make this statement with and get, you know, the different regulatory authorities on board to put in the caution measures we need to say, you know, slow down, because it's a difficult area to isolate.
Yeah. One of the
what else?
Go ahead, sir. Go ahead.
One of the things when you talk about the earbuds, where I was trying to jump in, I don't know why this thing didn't give me access, but you were talking about the impact of the earbuds and stuff, right? But there's a study that's going on now called acoustic neuroma, right? Which is where scientists are trying to determine the effect that earbuds and things like that are having on the brain. And they don't, well, it may cause tumors, it may not cause tumors, but it could lead to other sorts of problems. The other part, going back some while back, whereas I wasn't able to come in, was that last night on television there was a program coming out of they were talking about this type of development in Singapore, about the things that are driving these technologies, and that's where I came up with the conversation I was having earlier about the collateral damage, right? Rightly, while we are in this particular situation, I don't know. I cannot see where it's going to end. I just sort of bring those things to your attention because these, like I said earlier, these studies that are still being done. How do you measure a study of something that hasn't existed? How do you come to some conclusion? One of the things that I found in my research, and I was saying earlier, the Telecom Act of 1996 prohibits local governments from using health or safety concerns as a reason to block cellular phone development.
Wow.
Interesting.
So where does Bermuda sit in that? Will Bermuda adopt those same sort of, because we're just a wait-and-see group, and we sort of take on whatever anybody else in the world decides they're going to do, and that becomes our philosophical position or even our legal position with respect to just about anything.
And we see with our current government, which I would have hoped would have, strayed from or chosen to not continue with that norm, they're right on track with the recommendations from the WHO and CDC and all these other regulatory authorities. With that article you brought up yesterday on how we're dependent on also this, the Premier mentions that he has this WhatsApp group of different premiers and leaders within the Caribbean, and that there's this collective there. And so I'm hoping that through good conversation that can, but that article you were referring to yesterday, Elmore, that was speaking on how he's gonna, bring in foreign consultants, right? Showing that trend, that we're still on that trend, that we're dependent on everything from the outside, that we don't have our own data, That Cordell Riley spoke on. We're not a data sensitive place, which is ironically, we spoke on this a little bit, Dr. Chapman, how Bermuda is not, how ironic it is that we are a risk management center per se, in terms of insurance, yet we can't model or do, correlate data on our own issues here. We're gonna depend on models from outside.
Yeah. I want to say, and then I'm probably get off the line for you guys. I want to say that in terms of the health impacts, okay, to kind of summarize, you have the known health impacts of non-ionizing effects such as heating from microwave and radio technology. That if you use a mobile phone correctly, if you use your Wi-Fi router correctly, your microwave oven correctly, and if you're at safe distances from mobile phone towers, according to the majority of studies, say that you should be fine. However, as I established before, many people do not use the mobile phones in the ways that they are directed to use them, i.e. 2 centimeters away from the face, which is the SAR compliance that most of them are tested for, i.e. you put in the phone in our, trouser pockets or, our back pocket for people, and sometimes in their bras and different things like that, i.e. mobile phone towers also being located in high density areas where the exposure is higher than what it should be. So that was one effect. The other effect that is less explored and less understood is the effect on the electrochemistry of the body, okay, which could have more subversive effects, and they're still trying to understand how that might impact human physiology. So we mentioned about calcium voltage gated channels, we mentioned about nerves and stuff like that. Now, what I want to say, why I kind of summarized all of that, is that there are other supplementary effects that we need to consider, not just about mobile phones in general, but also about 5G as things progress. Because what 5G is all about is about more of our lives becoming permeated with these smart devices, okay? And more data, so on. I'm not going to get into the social side. I want you to stick to the technology side. More of these devices. Now, there are other effects already associated with mobile phones that are not related to the electromagnetic dangers, okay? Or directly. So, for example, we all know that mobile phone use can impact children's development because obviously as more devices permeate our society, children are using them a lot more, and they do not create the same level of development in the brain that, let's say, reading would, so on and so on. They promote a sedentary lifestyle also, okay? You also have the light effect. So the lighting that comes off of the devices, which is affecting our sleep patterns, and can also, the more we use our screens, I know as a teacher, obviously I'm getting older anyway, but the more we use our screens, it can affect your eyesight also, all right? So you also have the social effects in terms of the isolating effect. It's hard enough now to get our children off of devices. So when we now include devices that are much faster, much more interactive, let's say virtual reality. So now you're not only playing Fortnite, but you're putting a whole Fortnite goggle on, or, you're totally immersed in that. That's going to bring about impacts also. So we need to look at it holistically also. That's what I'm trying to say. That a lot of the cell phone companies, as well as the government, WHO, FCC, so on, they will continue to drive the safety along the lines of electromagnetic radiation, and the studies say that it's safe. But we are not just, you know, electromagnetic organisms in that way. We also have other ways that ill health can manifest itself. Okay, and that needs to be understood within the conversation as well. That the implementation of more mobile and more technology in our lives and in the lives of our family, in the lives of our workspace, needs to be considered holistically. Okay, from a holistic level and on in terms of the impacts. I hope you understand what I'm trying to drive at there.
Yeah, I think it's clear. I think it's clear.
Just before I leave, I just wanted to say that it's been interesting, but I also wanted to say, just for the purpose of what's been put into effect, say in 2019, the first 6 months of 2019, the FCC approved more than 21,000 RF emitting devices across the entire frequency range, right? And that's not necessarily talking about just the things that we're talking about.
Right.
Not necessarily just talking about the cell phone use. It could be in terms of your Bluetooth stuff and anything else that may be impacted by the FCC. Now, the FCC get their recommendations from where? Where they get their information from? They get information from the studies that are being done by the people who are the perpetuators or who are the developers of this technology. So, that being said, I'm going to have to go, but I'm sorry I wasn't able to be in there. I don't know why the things keep dropping out, but thank you very much for the opportunity to share with you all. Have a good one now.
Well, thank you for coming in.
And to piggyback off of that, the pervasiveness is also being put into outer space also, as we know. So the 5G technology, with people like Elon Musk, he is hell-bent, not only him, but also other companies, because it's all competitive, of launching thousands of satellites, more satellites into space, to radiate the Earth with these more electromagnetic signals. So that's something that
thou wilt not despise. Do good in thy good pleasure unto Zion. Build thou the walls of Jerusalem. Then shalt thou be pleased with the sacrifices of righteousness, with burnt offering and whole burnt offering. Then shall they offer bullocks upon thine altar.
Good morning. Salam.
Definitely. Well, it's been a deep conversation, as we knew it would be. I'm hoping our listeners had a chance to really take in this wealth of information that's being provided by yourself and Engineer Delano. And as you see, there's so much more to go. There's so many. This impacts so many aspects of our current lives and our future generation lives. And just like the deal with the airport for 30 years, it could be similarly thought of in that space where we could be, if we don't put up sufficient resistance, we could be stuck in a scenario where there's been a capital investment, and turning back a capital investment is far more difficult after it's been made. Uh-huh. So we want to object and put in and from a position of knowledge. That's a critical piece, and that's why we're gonna invite you back and engage you on the next level of the conversation, where we go a little bit further into the health impacts, but also the implications to privacy.
Yeah,
that's the next piece, and that socioeconomic effect of the pervasiveness of this technology. That's one key piece, I think, that differentiates 5G from 4G is the pervasiveness of it. That it's no longer going to be like this. The interface is going to change.
Yes.
You're not going to be it's not this flat screen in front of you or a cell phone in front of you. It's going to be devices all around you in varying degrees that you're going to be interactive with. And your choice in that matter is it's now. Before it comes, or Bermuda in establishing policy on how that rolls out. So not to go, because I can see you're ready to go.
Yes, well, it's been long.
It's been long. When you was on that call. I'm on. Your mic.
It's been. I'm off.
You gotta. I can't unmute it.
I'm on. I was saying it's been long. And so these gentlemen have been generous with their time for our viewers and listeners. So much appreciated, David. I've been chomping at the bit to have him speak to us here in Bermuda, especially. So today is the day, and so thank you very much, Dr. David Chapman, for Living Roots. Yeah, for Living Roots for sharing with us today. Of course, this is the first, like you said, of a series. I think this is going to get even more interesting with the people when we start delving into the more what we call controversial things that are out there about this whole level of radiation and
wireless
5G,
telecommunications.
Right,
yeah.
The whole piece is going to unravel. So today was a good platform to introduce people so that they're understanding the basis. So thank you very much. Much appreciate you, and the knowledge that I know you're bringing in experience, because you try and test stuff just like Iman and I. You're trying and testing the things that you bring. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, and I hope to come on to talk about other topics that are important in regards to environmental justice and
oh boy.
Oh boy.
all of those topics, because it's important. The key is, as you said, you have the David Chapman, but you have the Living Roots. It's important to have the alternative viewpoint, because a lot of times the viewpoint that's given doesn't come from a specific consciousness. So some people may not be able to get that viewpoint if that consciousness is not engaged in the topic. So that's the importance of having these diverse viewpoints on it. I was a little perturbed that I don't know, I won't get personal, but that a brother within our community had a debate on 5G but didn't include any alternative voices. They only had somebody who was a proponent of it, and that doesn't make any sense. You need to have the alternative voices as well as alternative consciousness to be able to really examine things holistically.
We agree. We are
not preaching to the choir, but
no. Well, the thing is, and I think that we have proven, and I'm glad that you want to give to it, because that's what it's here for. That's what Fresh has built. That's what Iman has really started to bring to the table here in being able to. Let's put in all our global resources. Let's put in all our intellectual capital, and not be afraid of the dissenting voice. We know we have to answer these questions. This is how we learn. This is how we draw out. The more people challenge you, the more work you're going to do. So thank you very much for bringing that. And, of course, we are going to be looking forward to having you as a part of this platform to educate who we are and our humanity. So you can know that you're welcomed.
Okay, good. Thanks, brothers.
All right, beloved. Yeah. All the best to your family and friends and everybody out there.
Okay. All right.
All right.
Thank you.
Yes, bless.
Yeah.
Salam.
Salam. Yes, brother Iman. So
real quick. Yeah, that was
very successful. Very successful.
Very successful. I just want to point people to the link I posted in the chat to Dr. Chapman, or Living Roots. David Roots TV is his channel on YouTube, and he's got that masterclass and some other documentaries / lecture style So if you're ready for a good learning experience and you got your time, tune in. He's offering a lot through that platform, and we're looking to engage him more often through that. And then we have here some real interesting conversation brewing in the commentary also on the whole deep state question. Dr. Shiva versus Dr. Bhattar, which is this big clash that's on to which I thought they were on the same side at one stage because they're both against the WHO and whatnot, but as I see for varying reasons. So we see back to this issue that what we consider the enemy is factions to it. It's not as, you know what I mean? To
look, you got to do this here. You're gonna have to do this here. Look.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
You're getting smacked in 1 minute and then look, come here.
Embrace it.
Embrace it.
Hey,
that's technology, right? I read like it. We all got our stories. Cause I could tell you, I remember, being a part of watching myself go from a $30,000 camera, down to a $4,000 camera, and that's crazy. Right?
Crazy.
But it was the digital age that became available that I didn't have to tanker on a 30-pound camera no more.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. Technology.
So, right. And computers came, and I embraced the editing because I wanted to go faster. Internet came, and I hated dial-up. But all these progresses is what, like Dr. David and Dallin, Engineer Delano Ingham, came to. Is like, hey,
Well, and to put another plug out there, but not on our channel, maybe we should do one. But on CITV, you can follow Delano's interview there. That's an actually, if you want to get a bit of the history behind Delano,
yes.
It's a wonderful documentary there on CITV on Delano.
Yes, for sure.
Just to plug,
Look, we ain't in competition with nobody.
Exactly.
So we ain't afraid to mention nobody like that there that's not our thing. You know
exactly.
If you come here and you're giving, then we know you're a giver.
Yeah, you're part of the solution.
What I mean? You're part of the solution.
And then one other note is someone asking in the comments, how do we find out when will be the next series?
Well,
the next installment. So.
Well, you would have to, when Brother Iman says it's ready, right? This one was a 3 week, 4 week, 3 week, right?
In the planning, but we got some pieces
is the planning. So Brother Iman is going to have to say, we give everybody some time to really look at this and go back and listen so that the basis of the next conversation doesn't pull us back here.
Exactly.
Right? We don't want people to really be pulling. We're trying to stay focused, as Brother Iman was doing with this particular thing. And I think you've done a good job today, Brother Iman.
That's right.
So we want the audience to, when you want to participate, please stay on topic. I think it's important. Don't bring me some calls out of left field. If you want to comment, good, but please keep it on topic because it starts to take away from the learning process that we're trying to actually put out there. So in terms of time, when the time is, you will know the time.
We're hoping for next week. We'll let it know.
Yeah, we'll let you know next week what sort of time it is. I'm not taking any more calls. I'm tired. I need to get off. I'm not taking any calls. I'm sorry, but I'm tired. So it's a draining exercise here. We're juggling a lot. So Brother Iman, thank you for the yeoman work that you're doing, in wanting to share and teach, educate us as a loop. And today also, it was also mentioned the appreciation for seeing melanated talent and expertise. It was very much appreciated in more than one space on my WhatsApps. That people appreciate seeing us talk about our global issue that's impacting our community. That was another thing that rang clear of what Fresh has consolidated in this space. that we are not trying to reach outside of our worlds in that regard. We know we have it. We have everything we need.
We have it's here. It's here.
We have it. And we can't be afraid to break the bondage to go out. Technology makes it, before it would have been like, David, you got to get on a plane and come and do this interview. Delano, you got to be up here 7 in the morning. Look at it. It's only out of necessity that the world and technology has made it that we have to connect. And that connection, if I'm not wrong, is going to be out of the real human need to have contact with each other.
And we know that with this social distancing issue, we see it. We see it. Oh, so just we're summing up. Yeah. I definitely want to plug that next week. Before we go back to 5G, I want to get into the effect on the African diaspora of this COVID-19, which is being touted as a form of influenza. But it's manifested in people of African descent or differently. And there's I'm actively in research right now, but I think that's really, really pertinent, more pertinent than coming back to 5G and the political piece, which we're going to be facing 5G for a good time ahead of us. But right now, this is some interesting information from people that are right in the battlefield, healthcare officials, from nurses to physicians, on how this is affecting the African community in the diaspora differently, from Africa to African Americans. We're seeing it's affecting them differently. So I'm going to try to break that down and get into some of the details there. So just a little prelude to a piece I think will come a little bit before we go back into 5G. But yeah, this has been beautiful, man.
Yes,
wonderful conversation.
Yeah, wonderful conversation. So yeah, so we're out. I'm out. You'll take a break and come down off this horse. Because you guys were busting my brains this morning. I was like, yeah, I see you, man, sucking this. And you know what was nice? I know that, but what was nice is seeing you all pick up. Dr. Chapman, Living Roots picking up right off of what Delano was saying. Delano picking up, it was just beautiful. I'm not gonna lie, it was beautiful. It was beautiful.
Well, I'm not gonna make this a big piece, but it is a Hamilton Parish, Bailey Spade.
No, I do. No.
In fact,
mute Mike. Can't hear you. Can't hear you.
Triangle there.
I was waiting for that. See, I laugh and I learn. Next thing I say, look, all of a sudden I see this. I know this is coming. I heard it dub plate. I'm about to drop. I knew the dub plate was coming. I was like, yeah. The minute he said, yeah, Delano is done, I said, yeah, Roots from down the way. I'm like, yeah, Roots from around the corner
and
right there.
And the connection between his, Dr. Chapman and his, Earlston Chapman and Delano worked hand in hand for, the whole careers.
But I'm going to have to tell you, from the root, and I know Living Roots will agree, from the root, his folks are from downtown. Just like Daddy from Ton, bro. Daddy from Ton. Okay,
can't claim you.
So you can't claim it. I know how you see. That's how you fat and big boys get. You want to just come and take everything. Yeah. Nasty. You went into the air to get there. I knew I should have caught it earlier. I'm going to ring the bell earlier next time, dude. I'm going to definitely ring it earlier. But beautiful, you guys, and gentlemen, and I know the audience, like I said, is something that it's being appreciated. And I think Iman, I'm serious. Look, we got people breaking into us from around the world right now. We know that. But I'm telling you, that thing yesterday was amazing when I finally broke into an American conversation. It was deep. It was like, wow, it was deep, because it's very interesting to get in and get them to acknowledge you, right? And all of a sudden, a conversation started cutting to me back out of a presidential conversation, and I felt like, okay, Almore, that's the beginning, right? That's the beginning right there of Fresh getting into. I got a chance to say, check out Fresh TV Bermuda. See? You see what I'm saying?
Exactly.
Because they started asking, they started saying, you know, our media is not talking like this. I'm saying, look, here's Fresh TV Bermuda. You know what I'm saying? And so it was a high time for me yesterday. I just thought I'd share that because I'm trying to penetrate. You know, there's other worlds with this narrative. Like, I've been trying. So it's interesting how it happened. You know, I was going completely against the tide of what anybody was saying. Completely against the tide. And I just kept banging it. I just kept banging it. And it finally, something I said just clicked. And then I got a string of things and responses out of it. So I think as we are entering this, I think this is what we're gonna enter that space like this. So people, if you want to be a part of the conversation, you know that it's about the given nature, and we would look to see how we could make that happen once we realize where we're going, because this is not a fly by night thing. It's not just because you want to. Okay, we are going to be very selective. I can tell you that. So let me let you go. You guys talk after we unwind. We're gonna download it.
Now I'm gonna start my boy. Get.
Yeah.
So
call my son up and see where he's at. I had spoken to him in between, but let me do that deal. All right, Dan. We're going. We're good. Talk to you later. Peace be with you all. Let me see. I'll play a song on the way out.
Okay.
Salam.
Yeah. Salam. Run that buju, man. Run the buju.
Run that buju. Which one? The last one?
The new one, man.
The new one?
Yeah, with the video.
Oh, that new one was high?
What? That buju. That was, I was vibing on that all day yesterday.
That buju was high. All right, but it's local Dars days. Yeah, it's local Dars days. I really try and stay on that. I was picking on I was picking on. Well, I mean, I've got live wires. I was running. What's his name today? Mostly Rasta Rabble. I was running Rasta, and I think you know what's it? My melanin. I'm gonna run my melanin from Rasta Rabble.
Okay.
Because you finished up with that, but that's what I think I'll go with. I'll run the melanin from Rasta Rabble and go out with that. Let me see. Where is it?
Wow.
Rasta Rabble.
All right, so I'm going.
All right, go on.
Yes.
All right, peace.
Salam.
The changes. Let me see if I get to Rasta Rabble and straight original. Well, did I play straight original yet? No, I'm gonna go out with straight original today. I'm going straight original. That's what we got. We're straight original today with all our elders, our young, upcoming living roots, and of course, Brother Iman. So I'm running. Yes, run that way. The original.
Blueprint, me not copy, not follow them. Nobody set me stand outside.
Celebrate my birthday today.
Give praise and
the glory.
From me little, me know semi great. I meet them love me underrate. If you not open the door,
talk to you tomorrow. Peace to you. Pastor Fridays tomorrow.
The gate. Whoa. When them a come with them bad vibes and energy. All when them a try tip me style and melody. They just run and wild. Say them a ball in a competition. Joke of them. They just run and wild. A girl clown a carry me name to girl. Let me do. Sure. I just run and wild. Nobody rate me. Go pay your water rate. Them a rat inna the business without a race. And me style them amazing without a grace. Metaphor simile make them heart race. And them can't stop me sweet with them and break. When me advise me big tune a just one tick. Me song better that the fans them a say. Me not beg selector finna one play. When them a